Anita, a warm welcome to the Face Yoga Expert podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm really good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And it's our second time meeting. We met in person a few weeks ago, which was amazing, at a launch of a beauty brand, which was great. But since then, I've been delving into what you do even more, and I just love it. And there's so much I want to talk about today.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm excited to chat.
I'm really excited to talk about your book in particular. I haven't read it yet, but I'm about to order a copy because I really want to. I think it's got such an important message, and I want to really take it back to the beginning to start with, because I know you often talk about your journey of growing up in South Wales and how you didn't feel that you were represented, and how that has really been a theme throughout your life, and how you wrote this book to help and empower others who feel the same. Maybe you could talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my book is called Ugly, and it talks about my own experiences growing up in South Wales as a plus size, dark skinned Indian girl, in the 90s, which is, was a time of, yeah, size zero and, very, very strict body standards and, very sort of Eurocentric beauty ideal. And it also within that looks at the beauty industry and beauty standards, and I'm a beauty journalist, and so I'm really at the sort of, I guess, almost like the eye of the storm with a lot of those things, because I sort of see where trends are going and what's happening in the beauty industry. And it Ugly explores our concepts of what is beautiful and what is ugly, and where those came from, and who basically created our beauty standards, the standards that we live our lives by, the standards that control us, the standards that have made so many of us feel like we don't fit in, like we're not good enough. And I think sometimes people think that those are quite sort of superficial things, but they're really not, because beauty standards and their control over us have the ability to really impact our entire lives, from, how good we feel about ourselves, to whether we have enough confidence to date, or to hold our heads up high in the world. So there's so many factors across our entire existences that are touched by beauty standards, that it is a really big, deep and complex topic that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, it's such an important topic to discuss. And in your opinion, do you think things are getting better or they're getting worse in terms of those beauty standards?
Yeah, this is really tricky, because in some ways, having social media, having the internet has given us access to see more people like us. So I guess if it was me growing up and I had social media, I could, yeah, I could find other plus size, dark skinned Indian girls out there and be able to see that and be like, okay, I'm not alone. Because I think in the past, it has very much been what we've been exposed to. So whether that was, TV, whether it was the Disney things we watched as kids, it's all of these different factors create, sort of combine to create what we see as beautiful. And with the internet, with social media, we can see more of that, a bigger variety. So that is a good thing. It's also, social media has also really helped with, movements like body positivity, etc. And that's awesome too. On the flip side of that, it's also created, the sort of airbrushing that obviously existed before in magazines and in adverts and all of that, but it's taken it to a whole new level where the we just look at our phones and we see images and we have no idea if they've been airbrushed or not. Whether, whereas before, you looked at an advert or you looked in a magazine, and yeah, that it would probably make you feel bad about yourself, but you sort of had a bit of separation. Whereas now everything is on our phones. We don't have the time to sort of go, yeah, that's probably, airbrushed or whatever, or face tuned. And I think in some ways it's made things worse, and it has created a sort of almost like homogenous appearance that sort of spans across the globe, which is kind of weird and interesting, where, people are starting to want to look the same, or like there is one desired aesthetic that everyone is trying to sort of emulate, and often that is being emulated through cosmetic surgery or treatments, etc. And yeah, so I think it can be good and bad, and I think that's why we do really need to start sort of reclaiming and taking control of our own beauty standards, in order to be able to sort of almost just exist in this crazy time, in this era where beauty is so big. There are so many beauty brands, it's worth trillions globally. And so yeah, I think we need to really be able to like navigate that ourselves.
Yeah, completely. I agree. And what do you think about reality TV at the moment? I mean, I'm a self-confessed reality TV fan. It's my one guilty pleasure. But even I am now boycotting things like Love Island because I just cannot bear another year of the same beauty standards. What's your thoughts on that? Again, do you think it's getting better? Do you think it's getting worse? And how do you think we can change it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I am also a very big reality TV fan. So if you do end up buying my book, Ugly, there's quite a lot of reality TV references in
I
there.
would love that.
There's a lot of Real Housewives. Uh,
Yes, that's my favourite.
yeah, same. That's my reality TV of choice. But in some ways, I actually like that generally speaking, they're quite honest about it
Yes,
on the Real Housewives in a
agreed.
way that I don't think they are on other reality TV shows, which I do quite like. And
Yes.
I think that honesty piece is really important. And I know that's really hard for people, and not everyone feels in the place where they can be like, I've had these things done or whatever, and perhaps they don't want to. But I think if you are in a position of influence like a celebrity, you do need to cop to those things, particularly if you are sort of saying like, it's my new face cream and for like
Yeah.
advertising, or I'm the brand ambassador for. You need to cop the fact that you've got tons of filler, or you've
Yeah.
done X, Y, and Z, and just have to be honest, because it's so detrimental to people's self-esteem to do otherwise. Um, so yeah, I think with reality TV, I actually generally on the whole think it's been a negative thing,
Mm.
and that it has, even if you look at the Kardashians, it's elevated people who are looking to make money from however they can, whether that is making women feel insecure and inferior and not good about themselves, which, is what they have done. They obviously don't see it like that, but even Skims, even a shapewear brand like Skims, that is the Spanx of our generation. It's the corset of the generation from before. It's the girdle from 1950. That's what it is, and that doesn't mean it's bad to buy those things, but they're still making money off reshaping women's bodies, in the way that they've reshaped their own. And I think it's really tricky because yeah, I think reality TV, because it's watched by so many people and it's so big and it's so global, I just think it's had a really detrimental effect on so many people.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think you're right in saying, there are certain people with reality TV who are quite honest about it. And I think honesty is the way forward because, I think if someone does want to go forward and have something like plastic surgery, we're in an era now where we have choice, particularly as women, we can choose what we do with our bodies. But I think actually being really responsible with that is where it's at for sure. And, I look at my kids. I've got two little girls who are nearly 7 and 10. And I know in the next few years, they're going to start to be exposed to certain images. And I'm really aware of that. And what I realize is you can't control what's happening externally. You can just give them the tools to feel as happy and as grounded and as confident in their own uniqueness as they can. And is that sort of what you've started to do yourself over the years? Is really sort of ground yourself in your own uniqueness rather than trying to fight against all those huge amount of external influences which we can't control?
Yeah, absolutely. I have started to do that. But it's interesting that you sort of talked about your children, because I do have a chapter in the book on childhood and where we sort of learn beauty standards from, because I think that's so fascinating. It's, and even if I look back through my own history, I can see where I got those beauty standards from. And it was from the Disney princesses that I saw, who, back then were invariably thin, white, blonde, and, essentially still are. Elsa in Frozen is still like the biggest Disney princess, and, she is all of those things. So like I do think things have changed a bit, but not enough. It was from, things I watched on TV, it was from the fairy tales, it was from my Barbie dolls, like it was all of those things combined to create a beauty standard. And those things start so young, and there are studies to say that children as young as 5 have self-esteem that's comparable to that of an adult. So actually we get those beauty standards very, very young, and they can really affect us, and they really stick in our childhood and our teen years, because that's when we are developing our like personalities and ourselves. So yeah, I think it's really hard to unravel, and sometimes I I'm not like a aftershot. I think that's the thing. I don't promise that with the book. Like it's not going to fix everyone's problems, and they're not going to come away thinking that, everything's fixed now because I've read this book. But hopefully it will shed a bit of light on where those things come from. And yeah, for me, it's been really helpful whilst I've been writing the book to sort of learn about where beauty standards have come from and how all this conditioning has happened. And yeah, how so many of us end up feeling like we're ugly when that is, that isn't a fact. That is ugly and pretty and everything in between it. Those are concepts that society has created.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw a little meme or a sort of little carousel on Instagram today, and it was by a photographer who had said that every person that he had ever photographed, whether it be a famous actress, a model, a grandmother, a 10-year-old child, had always in some way said that they felt ugly, which I thought was hugely interesting. Or they'd said little jokes like, "Oh, you don't want to take a photo of me, I'll break the camera," or "Oh, I don't look my best today," or "My skin's looking awful," whatever it is, not necessarily saying the words "I feel ugly." But I thought, isn't that interesting that it's actually spanning through so many generations? And we talk about young women a lot when it comes to beauty standards, but actually, I think that it is something that everybody is influenced by the beauty standards in the industry. Is that your experience too?
Yeah, definitely. And I grew up in sort of the 90s, and you know, I think a lot of my friends I know have got mothers who were really impacted by the sort of 80s diet culture and calorie counting, and are still very impacted by that today, and sort of see success in life as, staying as a size 8 or whatever. Like that is like, that's their proudest achievement. And, that can't not spill onto your children, really, if
Yeah.
that's your mindset. And that's not to put any blame on anyone, because that was very much what 80s diet culture wanted to do to people, particularly women. It wanted to make them calorie count and buy diet products to sell those things. But I do think we're in an era now where that has affected the next generation. So people of like my age. And I think unless we break that cycle, it just keeps going. And to sort of, really separate the fact that you can be beautiful and be, a wide variety of things, and look completely different to the sort of beauty standard that we've been sold. So yeah, I think it does. I think what can happen is that, and what has happened is that all of these standards accumulate over time, and that means that they keep getting passed on until you try and break that cycle. And that is really hard then, because you've got external factors like, cosmetic surgery is so big now, and it's all over social media, and it's very sort of devious in the way that it operates on social media too. And yeah, there are different fights each generation has, but ultimately all of it is trying to control women and control women's appearance so that they don't take up too much space, and that they don't have, they don't take up too much power, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always think that awareness is the first step to any change, whether it be in society, whether it be within ourselves. And I think there is now a generation of women who are now saying, okay, we're aware that this is happening. We're aware that this control is happening. We're aware that these beauty standards are being set on us, not just within our own lifetimes, but within generations and generations before us. If you look back through history, you can see there's always been beauty standards that women have been expected to live up to. Those beauty standards might be very different and look very different from today and come from very different places, but they were still, like you say, there to control women, to have some sort of hold over them. And I think really for the first time ever, women are saying, and men, but definitely women are saying, now is the time where we're aware. And when we've got this awareness, that is us taking our control back and starting to say we can change this. And I really hope then the next generation can not only grow up with that awareness, but can also grow up with that, I guess, that deep desire to make a bigger change, even a bigger change than we're making now.
Yeah, I think that is really true. I think what I would say though is, and so I write about this in the book, because I just think this is so fascinating. But every time there is a shift in female empowerment, in particular, there is, a body standard, a beauty standard, that shifts really radically. So, if we sort of say that we're in an era now where, people are embracing they're looking different, or embracing different kinds of beauty, and are being heard more. And we've had movements like BLM and like Me Too, etc., over the last decade or so. That is a huge period of societal change and a shift in a power dynamic. And I think it's really telling that at the same time cosmetic surgery rates have gone up. We've had so much innovation in like cosmetic surgery and injectables and treatments and all of that. That's all gone up. And the whole Instagram and like the whole, or social media, and the whole sort of way that's created beauty trends that are quite sort of controlling, I guess you might say, like contouring, or like all of these things that are really wanting to reshape and change how people look, and filters, etc. So I think there is always the flip side of that. And when we look back through history, that has happened in every significant shift in female empowerment. So if you look at the 60s, sort of mid 50s, 60s, when the contraceptive pill was first available, then there was a huge shift in how women, that was obviously a big power dynamic. And then there was a really big shift in how women were sort of, women's body standards. And it became about being thin and, being able to wear like a little mini dress, and being thin enough to wear a mini dress, and all of that. And, diet culture starts to really ramp up as well in sort of the 70s, when the women's sort of like, sort of second wave of feminism was really taking off. And then, diet culture starts to get really, really big. And then if you look even before that, sort of in the 1920s, there was another, as women were sort of gaining more sexual liberation, then they were also being controlled by having to be very thin, and that becoming the body standard. So I think there is always the push and pull, and it's just, we have to be able to look at that and recognize where we're being pushed and where we're being pulled, and like sort of almost try and separate ourselves from that. But it's really hard, because I guess unless you know these things and are actively aware of them, because we're all living our lives, we're all busy, we're all trying to just get through the day. It can be really hard, I think, especially if you're just scrolling on your phone, you're not really thinking about what you're doing. You can still take those messages on and not necessarily realize. So yeah, I think, to go back to your point, I think it's much better than it has been, but there is still that, there will, I think, until we have a society that is more level, there will always be that flip side.
I agree. The polarity is almost getting bigger. There's more awareness of it, but there's also, like you say, more plastic surgery and perhaps more control happening on the other side as well. So, both are happening all the time. And what do you recommend? So people that are listening will be, I'm sure, on board with everything you're saying, but they're probably thinking, okay, Anita, I get this, but how do I feel better about myself? What do I actually do? And what would you say to that?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So this is why I actually include some practical tips in the book, because I wanted to give people little things to try if they wanted to. And I'm not saying they will work for everyone, but they really work for me. And anyone I know who's read the book has said, oh, that's really good. And it can be quite simple, the little sort of things I've suggested. So I think the first thing, and the thing that's made the biggest difference to me, was just learning about the history behind our beauty standards and where they've come from. And the reason I think that's so important is because we are sort of told that this is what's pretty and this is what's ugly as a fact. And to them to be able to explore that and sort of say, actually, why is it so bad to get older? And like, where did that come from? Where did that fear of getting older, particularly for women, where did that come from? So I chart that back and look at where that turned, because there was a real shift around the sort of witch hunts, the medieval witch hunts. And that's when older women start to become feared. And, there is that whole rhetoric. So like, we would never know that, that's not common knowledge. So I think, once we start to know where those things have started and why they started, and why we've got this culture of fear around aging, etc., or whatever it happens to be, or fear around being fat, then that's a really good starting point. And some of those starting points are so shocking that they will make you feel incredibly angry. I know they really did for me when I was researching them. So I think that's the first thing, because it gives you the full perspective and it gives you the history.
Yeah.
And the second thing that we can do, and this is one of the things I mentioned in the book, is to just be really aware of how we're using beauty products. So this is probably, I think, one of the most, I guess, tangible ways to sort of just check in with how you're doing and how you're doing, like how you're relating to your appearance and in terms of your self-esteem, is when you're applying your makeup. And I think particularly with makeup, I think this works, is So just take a notice of what you are saying to yourself, because so often when we put our makeup on, we're in this sort of autopilot where we're like, oh, I'm hiding my like circles, and like I'm trying to make my eyes bigger or different. I'm overlining my lips. And like as we do those things, we're basically just trying to fix and correct our faces. And I think we can really catch ourselves almost like dressing ourselves down as we're putting on our makeup. And we don't realize we're doing it. But the fact that we probably do that most days is wild. So I think that's one of the routines that we can almost like interrupt and start to almost reclaim, and then start to choose products and use makeup in a way that's a bit more joyful. Because I guess for me, I just thought to myself, I don't want to spend the rest of my life trying to hide and fix and conceal my face. Like even the idea of that, I'm in my late 30s now, and even the idea of that, that's starting to happen. I start to see that with my friends. Even the idea of that feels exhausting, and it feels miserable, and it feels like half a life. I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for anyone else. So I think if we can try and shift our mindsets to using makeup as a way of celebrating ourselves and like exploration and fun and creativity, that can almost flip that switch a little bit. So I guess one of, everyone, this is different for everyone, but for me, I love products that feel quite fun to use. So it might be like picking products I love the packaging, for, rather than thinking, oh my God, this is going to make me look 10 years younger, or whatever it happens to be. And that really, I think that's really crucial for skincare as well. It's picking products that you love the smell of, or you love the packaging, or you love the texture, whatever it is, and moving it away from, I'm doing this to look younger or to look prettier or to look better. Doing it, moving your routines into sort of self-expression and creativity, I think is a really, really good way of just trying to shift your mindset around beauty.
Yeah, it's such a good way to shift our mindset. And it's really interesting how we've been so conditioned to this almost like anti-aging way of thinking. And it's interesting for me because I've been teaching yoga and wellness and face yoga for almost 18 years now. And I think one of the big reasons that my face yoga has been something that's become so popular for people is that anti-aging side of things. Now, I absolutely hate the word anti-aging. In fact, I'm very pro-aging. I'm 41 and I'm very excited about getting to 101. That's what I really want. I really cannot wait for all the rest of the decades of my life. And I'm happy to age naturally as well. I'm happy to do it without injectables, without Botox, without fillers. However, when I give my message across to people, which is really about feeling good on the inside, that's why I do what I do. I suffered from a very chronic illness 20 years ago. I overcame that with wellness techniques, and that's why I share everything I do now, because I want to help other people feel good on the inside. But if I, for example, so I do 3 YouTube videos a week. If I make a YouTube video which is about, techniques to help you feel calmer, or techniques to boost your confidence, or techniques to help your self-esteem or help you sleep better, those videos will hardly get any views. As soon as I'll put a title on like reduce your wrinkles in 3 easy steps, those videos get a huge amount of views. Now, when I'm within that video, you will see quite quickly that actually I shift it away from that, and actually I talk much more about self-gratitude and self-love and what we can do to really nourish our skin and feel good on the inside. But isn't it interesting that so many people, even my sort of soulmate clients, as I speak about them, which are very much, women that are into wellness and holistic techniques and positive aging, still will gravitate much more towards those videos than the ones that are feeling good. Is that your experience as a beauty editor as well? If those sort of headlines are used, that's what people still want, even if they are women that are into to wellness and feeling good.
Yeah, definitely. Like there was a move a few years ago in the beauty industry to move away from anti-aging,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still a huge search term.
Yeah,
Um,
it really is. Which I
and
never use. I hate it. I hate
yeah,
it.
it's a really tricky one because I like part of it is a people thing, because the older we get, that on a very like dark level, that's the closer we are to dying. Like that is
Yeah.
it's that sort of fear of I guess the end,
Mhm.
which is very dramatic, but that is part of that's an intrinsic human thing. So that I think is
Yeah.
we all generally have that. But the other added part of that, I think, for women is that we've been told our entire lives that to be beautiful, you have to look young and you have to look frozen in time and frozen in a moment. So we're always like trying to climb our way back or like rewind the clock to this one moment in time that doesn't exist anymore. And
No.
I think, yeah, I think that's why anti-aging treatments and, products, etc. And that word anti-aging still holds a lot of, yeah, it holds a lot for people. And I think we need to sort of explore what that means. But the only way I think we'd ever shift that narrative is if we see different forms of beauty celebrated and more women getting older. So, you know, more women in Hollywood that are older. It only ever seems to be like Helen Mirren is the only
Yeah,
one who's allowed to get any older. You don't see
literally.
anyone else. You
Yeah.
don't see different forms of aging. You don't see like, if you do see an older woman or, even a woman with grey hair, she's always like, she's always classically beautiful. She always fits
Yeah.
the sort of beauty standard in other ways.
Yeah.
Like, we don't
Always
see,
looked at as radical, or they
yeah,
say, oh my goodness, she's let her hair grow grey, and it's like used as some sort of, radical step against the norm rather than actually the norm.
yeah. Or if it's someone who's like, gotten older but isn't having any work done, she's probably a former model. It's never
Yeah.
just a normal person celebrated for their own beauty or someone doing something a bit different, or it's never those people, and we just don't see enough of it. And actually, I put up some stories on Instagram just sort of pointing some amazing people who have just done aging in different ways and in inspiring ways. And it might just be like people who are dressed really like incredibly,
Yeah.
people like Iris Apfel, like those kinds of people. And it was so popular. I've saved them all on my Instagram because so many people were like, this is amazing. We need to see more of this. And I felt that too, seeing these women, because I wanted to see ways to still be me, but just,
Yeah.
you know, but just evolved and just more mature. And like, I think that is, we really sorely lack that, like different ways to still be ourselves. I think women have always been told, when you are this age, this is what you are, then you're this age, then you're past it, then you're like trying to fight, fight aging. Now you're this, now you're that. We're always being put into boxes in the way that men just aren't. And I know, men have their own struggles, etc. And there's lots of toxic masculinity and lots of factors around that. But I think for women, that physical appearance is so strong and so controlling. And it makes us miserable. And, as I said, it sort of makes us live these half lives where, you know, we sort of after the age of like 20, it's all downhill from here. Like how is that not an awful way to live? Like that is awful. That's
Yeah.
awful. And yet that is how most of us have been taught that we should live, and that, after 20 we have to then like fight aging.
Yeah.
And there it becomes this battle. So yeah, I think, sorry, I don't know if I've gone off topic at all,
That
but
was a really great answer. That was
quite a
fantastic.
long rant, sorry.
No, we
Very
love a
passionate
good
about the
rant.
topic.
It's an amazing topic, and I'm hugely passionate about it as well. And I think it's so important that we talk about it because I think that's actually how the changes are going to happen. And like you say, highlighting people who are aging in a really positive way, because the more that we can highlight those people, the more we're going to feel excited about the aging process and the more we're going to all accept it because actually it's happening whether we like it or not. So we either go through it with dread and fear and trying to hide away, or we go through it really celebrating every moment of it and be very, very pro aging, which we absolutely should. And I'd love to know, just to finish off, what wellness techniques you do on a daily basis just to help you feel your best self.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do Vedic meditation every morning. I'm meant to do it twice a day, but I can never quite fit that in. So I do that, which really helps me. I've got a very busy mind. I've got ADHD, so my brain is always on the go. That really helps me. But I know 20 minutes of meditation is a lot for a lot of people, just chanting. But for some reason, that just seems to work for me, and I feel that very immediately. I also try and exercise as much as possible, and I do actually. So interestingly, I really struggle with walking because I find it really boring, and if anything's boring, I find it just doesn't hold my attention. So if I'm walking to somewhere or walking with a purpose or a task, that seems to help. So I almost like trick myself into it and try and listen to podcasts, etc. As I do that. I journal every day as well, and just sort of like try and like get some thoughts out. And I sometimes find it hard to know how I feel. So I have this, it's actually quite funny, but it's sort of like this like emotions wheel, like a feelings wheel.
Yeah.
And if I can't work out how I feel, I sort of look at this feelings wheel and it kind of almost like shows you
Oh,
how
that's great.
it's really good. If you just if anyone just Googles like feelings wheel or like emotions wheel,
Okay.
um it sort of almost like breaks the feeling down so you understand it more. So it might say something um like sad, and then it'll be like you can either pick like angry, upset, lonely, etc. And then it'll take you on to another one and it sort of pinpoints the feeling down so you can almost work out a bit more what's upsetting you. I find that really useful. Might not be
Okay.
for everyone, but
No, that's really interesting. And as you say that, I'm actually thinking how good that would be for my youngest daughter, because she feels a lot of emotions quite strongly. So actually, and sometimes is not aware of what that emotion is. So that could be really good for her as well.
yeah, I think it was probably originally developed for children, but yeah, I
Okay.
think it could be really good for everyone. It's really
Yeah.
useful. Yeah, I think they're the main things. And I use a weighted blanket as well. I find that really calming. Um, yeah, but then I also I have therapy. And I definitely think it's good to, if you can, obviously I know these things cost money, but yeah, if it feels too much to do all those things on your own, is to outsource anything you can. So yeah, like get a therapist if you can. And I also have a personal trainer as well because I find exercise really hard and
Mhm.
boring again as well. See a common pattern here. So I can do about 20 minutes of exercise and then my brain is like, nope, we're bored now. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think having someone who can keep me like a bit more accountable and isn't weight focused, isn't diet focused,
Yeah.
it's more like I want you to just do these steps because they're good for your health.
Yeah.
You should be like, like coming at it from a very neutral perspective has been really helpful for me as well.
That's amazing. Anita, thank you so much. It's been so lovely chatting to you and such important messages you've been sharing as well. And I know that everyone would love to hear about where they can get your book, where they can follow you on social media, your website. Maybe you could just share that before you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best place at the moment is probably my Instagram. So that is at it's me, Anita B. And if you've got any questions or anything, you can drop me a line there. The book is available from all sort of big bookstores. It's on Amazon. It's at Waterstones, Foyles, Blackwell's, all of the biggies. And it's also on Audible, an audiobook. So if you want me to read in my dulcet, rubbish Welsh accent that has completely gone after years in London, then yeah, there is that option too.
Amazing. I'm definitely going to do the audiobook. I'm much more an audiobook than a physical book. Yeah, and I can walk at the same time. So stops the boredom when you're listening to something really interesting like that. So Anita, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.